My name is Mairee Rosette. I wrote this little story about growing up in Liverpool. This one in particular is about Christmas in Liverpool in the post-war years. I hope you enjoy listening to it. Please feel free to leave your comments. Christmas always comes whether one is ready or not, and in those desperate years following the war, as England put on its brave face, licking its wounds and maintaining a stiff upper lip, rebuilding its battered infrastructure, each city was left to its own devices, recovering as best it could. The people of Liverpool, already poor before the first bomb fell, scrambled amongst themselves for scarce resources as they tried to restore some semblance of the pre-war holiday season. Shops were still bare, shelves empty, and there were no luxuries to be had unless there was a seafarer in the family who would arrive back from a run to New York, bags stuffed with blue jeans, cigarettes, and big 78 recordings of American rock and roll music. It was 1949, and I was 9 years old. My father had been dead for 6 months, and my mother was still grief-stricken and in shock over the loss of her handsome husband, who entered the hospital for minor surgery one day and was dead the next from an overdose of anaesthesia. There would still be the old traditions of plum pudding, Christmas stockings on the hearth, and carol singing at my grandma's house, but funeral expenses had used up all our family savings, leaving nothing for Christmas fare, neither toys nor food. We weren't even sure if we could afford our favourite tradition of inviting the small church choir, who always made a stop on Christmas Eves past, to warm up at our house while enjoying my mother's homemade gingerbread and cider. Holding our breaths and silent as mice, we would peep down through the stair rails, dressed only in our flannel nighties, after leaping out of bed when the sound of music and laughter burst through the front door. In would stream the familiar motley crew to gather in front of the fireplace, thawing out their feet while singing. There was Miss Riddoch, an elderly spinster lady who had spent her youth as a missionary in Africa, now bent almost double with age and arthritis, still wearing her trademark woolen gloves with the fingers cut out, as she eagerly reached for a slice of cake across the stout stomach of Mr. Tregilgas, whose wind-blown cheeks, red with the heat from the fireplace, betrayed his line of work as watchman, out in all weathers with only a coal brazier for company. The Devitt family, our neighbours from across the street, parents of 5 daughters, always dressed alike in their serviceable army surplus serge coats, demobbed and domesticated and made merry by identical knit mufflers. Fingers Holt, so named for his habit of wearing an overly large coat that swamped his arms, exposing only the tips of his fingers. These were the familiar faces we would miss this year. My sisters and I would celebrate Christmas at school, like all the other children, with carols and plays. There would be paper chains made from strips of newspaper to string across the classroom, and a simple fir tree donated by the local farmer and decorated with a yellow painted star. A raffle on the last day of school for a goose raised from a chick on the grassy lawn inside the quadrangle, and fattened up by the hated bloater fish sandwiches carried from home by the children for lunch, then slyly fed to the greedy goose. How could we cheer up our mother? I knew that my sisters were running errands and babysitting to contribute, but I was only 9, too young to babysit. But I had an idea. Why don't we carol sing around the houses in the neighbourhood I suggested to my two best friends as we walked home from school one evening, just a week before Christmas. People will cheer up when they hear us, I said confidently, and they'll give us a couple of pennies. We'll go from house to house every night until we have enough money to buy presents for our families. They looked at me sceptically before replying, "How can we do that? None of us know all the words to the verses or the tunes to all of the carols." "We'll practice. We'll buy a carol book with all the words," I responded. "If each one of us has to borrow sixpence, we can pay it back out of our earnings. Go home and work on it tonight," I ordered, "and we'll start tomorrow." By this time my idea had scared most of my classmates away, leaving behind these couple of faithful friends. We were an odd-looking trio. Norma was big-boned and scrawny-looking, with a deep, gruff voice. Her father had disappeared, gone missing. Some neighbourhood gossips had it that he had run off with another woman, but in his job as a bookies runner, delivering bets to the racetrack, it was rumoured that he had kept running with the money. Margaret, with her straw-coloured hair, beaked nose and wire-rimmed spectacles, was the class brain who easily passed her exams. Her stepfather was the insurance man who came to the house to deliver the payout after her father was killed in the war. And there was me with my wild black gypsy hair and strange mother who, crying all the time, darted silently through the alleys of our neighbourhood to avoid conversations with the neighbours. We met the following night, still wearing our school uniforms and Wellington boots, though now our berets were replaced with woolen balaclava hats and thick woolen mittens on our hands to ward off the bitter cold. The air smelled acrid, a mixture of the swirling fog that floated up from the docks, mixed with chimney smoke and the briny smell of the sea. The dark, empty streets were lined with poor, terraced houses and lit by an occasional gas lamp that threw its yellow circle down onto the white, shiny cobblestones. It was hard to tell who was home, as families would be gathered close to the only source of heat, the fireplace in the small back room near the kitchen to keep warm. Everything was on ration, even the electricity, and none of the houses were brightly lit up. Approaching our first house, we pulled out our communal songbook and began singing. Good King Wenceslas looked out on the feast of Stephen, then on to Away in a Manger. In between carols we listened. No sounds came from the house, and no signs of life from within. We shivered on the icy step, staring at the unmoving door as though willing it to open, until we ran out of songs to sing, and it dawned on us that no one was home. Moving on to the next house, with spirits rapidly sinking, frustration now focused on me, the culprit, until with a creak of a lock, the door swung open to reveal a small, bird-like woman whose greyness was relieved only by the toothless smile that creased her face. "I've got no money to give you, my girl," she said, "but it was lovely to hear you sing. Brightened up my day no end, you did." "That's all right, missus," I responded. "Happy Christmas anyway." The plan wasn't working. I had to think fast, or I'd lose my caroling chorus. My friends glared angrily at me through the slits of their warrior headgear. "We're singing to empty houses like a bunch of loonies," grumbled Norma, as she stamped her feet and blew on her numbed fingers. "Yeah, I'm freezing too, and nothing to show for it," agreed Margaret. "We'd be better off staying at home listening to Dick Barton, special agent, on the radio by the fire." "Here's what we'll do tomorrow," I said cheerily. "We'll knock on the door first and ask them if they want us to carol sing for them. If the door doesn't open, we'll know there's no one home. If it does, and they don't want us to sing, we'll move on. If they say yes, we know they'll give us a couple of pennies. We'll begin earlier tomorrow, at tea time, before everyone leaves for the pub. So the following day, we set off again, our new plan in effect. It worked perfectly once we had figured out that Norma with her gruff voice was ruining the melody, as she insisted on singing Hark the Herald Angels to the similar tune of Once in Royal David's City, resulting in a minor squabble on the step just as the homeowner opened the front door. The problem was resolved when she agreed to join in only on the chorus section, and the pennies came pouring in as families invited us into their homes, requesting their favourite carols. "Can you come back tomorrow night about 7, love?" one family asked. "Our Jimmy will be home from sea, flush with cash. He'll see you all right if you sing his favourite carols for him." And we were there on the dot, singing at the top of our voices, "The Holly and the Ivy," followed by "Christmas is coming, the goose is getting fat, please put a penny in the old man's hat." Even throwing in an old sea shanty that had nothing to do with Christmas. At the end of each night's singing, we'd head to McKay's Chippy, where we would share an order of fish and chips while counting our money before dividing it between the three of us. As Christmas grew closer, we refined the plan even more as we moved into the semi-detached housing area beyond our neighbourhood, whose front doors stood only feet apart. Then we could sing one set of carols while serving 2 families, doubling our take. My mother could invite the church singers over after all, and there would be money over to buy a gift for her and my sisters. And before we knew it, Christmas Eve had arrived, and our postman was found as usual, riding the double-decker bus, brown burlap sack of undelivered holiday cards tucked under the stairs to the upper deck, overcome by his many cups of cheer. Sherry at Mrs. Miller's house, whiskey at the O'Reillys, and so on down the street until the neighbours carted him onto the bus, legless and singing. My mother baked all day and stoked up the fire to prepare for the choir. Our house smelled once again of gingerbread and cider. The future looked bright again, as bright as the Christmas star. Our little trio sang together that Christmas Eve of 1949 for the first and last time. The following year we'd all moved away to other neighbourhoods in the city, and besides, we were too grown up by then, but I'm sure that Christmas lives on in all our memories.